Welcome to this episode of Foresight TV. I'm Steve Moran. Most of you probably know that. Many of you probably know my two guests that I have on, Chip Conley and David Stewart. They are people who have been immersed in this idea of what it looks like for us boomers to age. And we're going to talk a little bit today about what they've learned, what they're thinking, how they see senior living fitting into all of that. But let's actually start by having each of you do a quick introduction. Let's start with you, David, and then we'll go to Chip.
My name is David Stewart. I'm the founder and CEO of Aegis. We're a publication and a community that's been around for about 6 years.
Great. And we'll put links into your website. And Chip?
Sure. I'm Chip Conley and the founder of the Modern Elder Academy and a longtime hospitality entrepreneur who lives down in Baja in Mexico most of the time now, where our primary campus is.
Well, I still got to get down there. I keep kicking myself for not getting down there. Lola Rain, who's part of my team, she is in love with it. She was just down a few months ago, so I'm really excited about doing that. So you guys have been deeply engaged in what it means to, in your late 50s, 60s, 70s, live a powerful, meaningful life. We're obviously in this new territory where not that many people that old, and when they did, they weren't that healthy. What have you learned? Are there things that have surprised you? And I'm just going to throw that out and let you talk, because they're a lot more interested in hearing you than me.
Go ahead, David.
Well, I think that understanding that people our age are very different than like my mom's generation. So our expectations for our lives, for my mom, there was there wasn't a lot of optionality. There were like two kinds of lettuce in the supermarket. And, for us, I think a lot of the motivation is self-actualization. And understanding like, how can we have impact? How can we have agency? How can we become the best versions of ourselves? And then looking at a wide variety of options on how that can happen. So I would say the bar is a lot higher to address people like us than it was, say, 20 or 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think I love the self-actualization premise, since I'm a big Maslow fan. Wrote a book about him. Think about the hierarchy of needs. The hierarchy of needs has basic needs, survival needs, then maybe success needs, social needs, and then this transformational need. And generally speaking, I think that the boomer generation is a generation that grew up understanding personal growth and human potential, and yet when you see senior living facilities and communities, they're almost like senior dying communities. They're, to quote Robert Kramer, they're places where people are maybe frittering away their time. Excuse me, I'm just going to be provocative, and surrounded by other people their own age, and generally not engaged and not thinking that, frankly, this is the time of their life where they could most learn something, or be curious, or connect with people of a different generation. And so it's almost like the senior living industry has become more focused on care, which is important, and not enough on community. And I actually think that, both David and I have really focused on how do you create a community, get them extremely engaged, and have them almost think of their relationship with us being something that is almost a familial relationship. And so I think senior, the good news is senior living knows it needs to change, but it's slow to change because it's a real estate business, and real estate businesses tend to take a long time to change.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's built on a hospital model, and there's definitely something I tell people: we need to discriminate between disability and age. disability is something that needs help. It needs to be treated. It needs service. That's not the same as age. And I think that asking someone who does not have a disability to move into a hospital oriented setting, that's not going to happen. I mean, if you just look at the age of people who are entering senior living now, it's what, like a decade, 15 years later than it used to be. So why is that? We're in an age of request, not required. So what can we do to make something that's requested, that's really desirable, versus something, I'm entering this in a stretcher or a wheelchair because it's required. I don't have any other alternative.
Yeah.
So if you were going to, so the three of us, we're going to go out and we're going to start the best ever senior living community company, and we're going to do it completely differently. What's that going to look like? What's day-to-day life going to look like, and how are we going to tell the story?
Okay, so let me start with that one, and then we'll go to my esteemed friend, because we're actually in the process of doing this. First of all, I wouldn't put it under senior living. I wouldn't start with that.
Okay.
I definitely would retire the idea of retirement communities. It would be a regenerative community, not a retirement community. What does that mean? So what is a regenerative community? Well, so to retire, if you look at technically the words, retire often means to withdraw, and to regenerate means to actually give life. And so a regenerative community, speaking in that language, can then actually tap into what we're in the process of doing right now, is creating a regenerative community with a regenerative farm in the middle. So instead of the golf course being the nucleus in the center, you actually have a regenerative farm with creating especially great farm to table kind of produce and meals. That's in the center. You then have a wisdom community, what we call Modern Elder Academy, dedicated to long life learning. So it's actually dedicated, the school is dedicated to help people to understand what is a long life and how do you actually create vitality later in life. How do you focus on the three things that Stanford University has shown, Phil Pizzo, of purpose, wellness, and community as being the three most important things to people in their second half of adult life. And then you have a series of homes that are not like ranch style homes on the fairway, but they're actually integrated within the farm, so you sort of feel like you're part of nature. And those homes are for some people it's their primary homes. There's some it's their secondary homes. If it's their secondary home, they put their home back into a pool when they're not there. Let's say they're there only 3 months of the year, and during those other 9 months, we create what we call sabbatical sessions there. So somebody who wants to come and they're 60 years old and they want to come and do a 2 or 3 month stay there, do some of the programming we have, want to focus on writing their memoir, or focus on reconnecting with their husband or wife because they're now empty nesters, that's available. So that's to me. And then there's a connection to the local community. So you're regenerating through agriculture, regenerating personally, regenerating a sense of community, and then regenerating in the broader community by bringing in intergenerational opportunities as well. So that to me is the future of what I would no longer call retirement communities, but I would call them regenerative communities.
So David, I'll get to you. One thing I want to say is that my biggest negative in moving into senior living as it exists today is the monolithic nature of just being with a bunch of older people. Historically, I've been with people, even today, the people I feel most connected to are largely people who are 10 to 15 to 20 years younger than me. And so this just really resonates with me. David?
Yeah, I love how Chip already came with like the whole the blueprint. Senior living community. One, don't do it. That's nuts. What are you thinking? Old people don't like other old people. Hello. they find them boring. So I think that if you were going to make some kind of a community, it needs to be an intergenerational community. I think that it needs a transient component to it. So you're constantly, new people are coming in. I think it needs a wellness component to it. I think that one of the things people, me and Chip and a lot of other people our age like to do is to engage with younger people and to, Chip is the ultimate mentor. I can't even believe how many people Chip mentors. It's like a phone book. But to have part of this community be younger people, maybe they're entrepreneurs and they need access to capital, they need access to knowledge, they have technology. And so there's a built-in, one of the problems with a lot of these things is there's not, people don't have skin in the game, right? So if you set it up so there's some sort of mechanism there where you have young people living here in some kind of an incubator, and then you have older people maybe providing capital or knowledge base, and then you have a transfer of knowledge intergenerationally, but there's skin in the game on both sides of it. It's not just like, you seem like a nice guy, I'm going to have a friendly conversation with you.
And why not have a co-working space in this community we're talking about that actually provides, services and much more affordable co-working space than WeWork does, such that people say, you know what, I go there because more affordable, much more broader collection of people, and they have this little investor forum where older people can actually potentially invest in our companies. Like, that sounds pretty good.
Oh, that's cool. I love that. I love that.
And I think that, we're involved in a lot of longevity wellness technology. I think that's essential. I think if you look at the people who are most active in that, it's going to be males 35 to 45. And having a center like that for a lot of these sort of like new technologies that are coming out, I think adds a vibrancy and a meaning to things. I think you will need, I do like Chip's idea of the access to the community. I find that any kind of community that exists in isolation is just,
it's like a pond that doesn't have water flowing into it. It starts to get a layer of stuff on the top. It sort of goes rancid.
So, if you're going to need staff here. The staff probably has children. So why doesn't that school or that facility for taking care of the staff exist in the community? So it's not separate. So as to how can we integrate everything together? That's what I do. Stop with the isolation, this like weird thing that's built in the desert. And I mean, the villages.
As Mark Friedman calls it, age apartheid.
It's ghettoization.
It is. So I got some questions here for you. First thing is, how do you pay for this? I mean, this sounds great for people who are pretty well heeled. Now, in fairness, this is a problem in traditional senior living today. So it's not like you're proposing something that's going to be grossly more expensive than what already exists. But do you have any thoughts on people who are more means and how they play in all this?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a lot of research on this. Let me take a step back and just give a little bit of background on Modern Elder Academy, because started it 3 years ago. We've had 800 people go through the program from 24 countries. 62% of them have been on some form of scholarship. And so that's something we funded ourselves. We now actually have a nonprofit, a 501c3 called AGE, the Association of Growth and Education, that focuses on midlife and later education. So there are a lot of nonprofit foundations out there that would love to support an organization that was trying to create socioeconomic diversity in communities. And so the plan we currently have, which is to create a regenerative community, we have a property in escrow. I'm not going to talk about the details of it, but it's about 2,600 acres. That community that we're going to build is going to actually have people at all different price points, just like Modern Elder Academy has. So it's going to actually focus on people who could be, a physical therapist or a nurse their whole life, and and there's a way to actually help subsidize their housing. But it is for sale. That's our current plan, as opposed to a rental plan. So someone would have to be able to come up with a small deposit or a small down payment. But I think the key is that, because one of the things that I feel sad about is I see these sort of more aristocratic communities behind gates that are the ultimate, the one percenter of the one percenters, and the financial model makes sense, but the life model doesn't. And I think one of the things that I've learned from creating the MEA, from Modern Elder Academy, is if we have a fixed mindset and we continue on that fixed mindset path the rest of our lives, our sandbox gets smaller and smaller and smaller in terms of what we're willing to try and who we spend our time with. And frankly, a living community should be the opposite of that. It should be about vitality and how do I open up my possibilities as opposed to close them down. And so often I see that these places as safety, especially at the high end, it's about safety and security. And frankly, if you want that much safety and security, you might as well just live in a padded room. So I don't know, David, what do you think?
Well, I think you're entirely right. I think that, with this, that's sort of like the padded sofa, the giant soft car thing. I mean, what you're seeing here is that sense of cocooning, insulation, like keep me away from a sensation, keep me away from an experience, is going. I mean, some of our clients are car companies, and I can tell you that's over. Like that's moving away. I think that for me, the Chip has studied, so I found such a disadvantage here. I mean, for me, I would do a rental.
Speak from the heart. Speak from your heart. Don't worry about the research piece.
I would do a rental model. I wouldn't do a condo model because I think that the sale becomes. I think you need to control the community, and I think the rental model would allow you to do that. To me, what I would do is I'd have some big fancy houses and charge them a lot of money. And then I'd have smaller 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom efficiency units. And I would build it in a way that these are all integrated and locked together. Because I think I fully agree with Chip that you need to, people understand they need to expand their naturally contracting social group. And that's why I also think having a transient component to it in some way, the way Chip was talking about, people come in, if you have like the same group of 100 people, okay, after a while, but if you have like 20% of that or 30% of that is changing out at some optimal interval, you're constantly getting new people that you're going to have dinner with, and that becomes really interesting.
Yeah, I can tell you, I personally normally I go to about 20 conferences a year, and I haven't been on an airplane since March. Not particularly because I'm afraid, but I just have no place to go, and I'm so dying for in-person conferences to be able to have that human connection. So absolutely, so.
I want to just say one other thought. There's an organization based in Zurich called the Embassies of Good Living, and started by a young guy, young relative to me, relative to us, maybe 20 years younger than me. He's probably about 40 years old now. And the whole premise of the Embassy of Good Living is intergenerational good life in European buildings. So you take a 4-story, 6-story walk-up building in Amsterdam, and you have 30 units in it. And frankly, in their model, the older people help subsidize the younger people in the same building. But it's very communal. It is co-living in the sense that there's your actual unit is not very big, even for the most expensive ones, because most of the living spaces are communal living spaces. And so this is not for everybody. But, you know, let's say you're 65 years old, 75 years old, and you want to actually live with other people that are really interesting, and you want to choose a particular building that has an arts focus, or a building that has a focus on sports or athletics. So the connection is not demographic, it's psychographic. And so the people are connecting at all ages, but generally speaking, the units that the older people are going to choose are actually a little bit more of the expensive ones and slightly larger ones. And so you end up with these communities that have a psychographic attraction to, whatever. There's one that they've been talking about doing, which is cultural and travel oriented. Wouldn't that be interesting? And wouldn't it be interesting over time to riff off David's idea that it's not about, yes, buying the home, but it's like a membership club. So you're sort of like, okay, they've got one in Park City, and I want to go stay in the Park City one, and then I want to go stay at the one in Austin, and then I want to go stay and so it is a model where there's a secure community of people who live there most of the year, but it's a bit of a nomad community as well, of people who say, you know what, I want to go and stay in some of these other places. And I think that, people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, probably not 90s, but those decades would love something like that, because it actually allowed you to be the nomad that I think that the world has now opened up to, because Wi-Fi is everywhere, but also because for those who are still working, remote working is now part of the equation.
Well, you're probably both aware of Ollie, which is tiny apartments, lots of common space, primarily New York and some of those areas where living is so expensive, to where they're looking to, in some cases, share apartments, in other cases, single apartments, but very much smaller. And I did a story about them, and I interviewed them, and I asked them about older people, and they said, well, yeah, we don't age discriminate, which of course they can't. But I actually suspect that maybe they're missing the boat there, and that if they were marketing to an older population, that it's what you're talking about already. So, so the question is, and there've been a couple questions about money here. I started with the low income, but it's been the question really is there investment capital out there to go do this, Chip? This magical thing that you're doing?
Well, we're doing it. And we've got about $30 to $50 million allocated to it. So we're going to go out and pioneer it. And in so doing, we will hopefully be able to show a proof that it works. And then I believe that we'll see many of the developers out there look and say, okay, well, let's do a regenerative community, not a retirement community. So it's early in this. So the investment dollars go to what shows is working, as well as what has great returns, and I think both will be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I know because I'm involved with a lot of this. There's a huge amount of money out there looking at exactly this. They realize the old thing doesn't work, but it is, as Chip said, it's a real estate play which moves super slowly. But people like the embassies, other people, what's interesting about the embassies is they're repurposing. They're not building new buildings.
Right.
They're repurposing existing buildings in very dense urban environments.
Right.
And if you're older, what better place to be? So you have access to culture, you have access to medicine, you have transportation. And so there are things that you don't have to build into the back end of the house, right, that you would if you were like out on the cruise ship in the desert.
Yep.
Right. So we've spent the last 25 minutes basically destroying the existing model of senior living, right? So here's my question for you. You are hired as a consultant to come into a company that already has senior living bricks and mortar, so they can't go out and create this wonderful brand new thing, what you're doing, Chip. what would you teach them to do? And I want to start very specifically by kind of rolling back to where something talked about earlier. To me, the idea of creating community is an area of weakness and opportunity. So you already have bricks and mortar. You got to work within that context. How are you going to fix that?
David,
and now, David, let's actually start with you, because I know you're doing a little of that work right now.
I mean, I think you have to discriminate. Are you dealing with disability? That's one thing. Or are you dealing with something else? Are you dealing with people? Are you dealing with a community of people who are pretty functional? And then I would approach it from that. And I think that the sell to me is, and I work with people like this, I say, how can you help people on their journey, that Maslow journey that Chip is talking about? How can we help them become the best versions of themselves? And if you approach that through a holistic, like all of it way, you win, because who doesn't want that? Well, actually, there are a lot of people. Jimmy Buffett's crew doesn't want that. Fine. They're going to go there. They're going to do their thing. You know, there is a whole crew of people out there that just want to like live out the last long weekend and drink and smoke themselves to death. God bless them. I don't know anything about those people. They seem nuts to me. But like, our people don't want that. Like, they expect. The other thing to think about here is, Steve, people are expecting a much longer health span, if not lifespan. And to think about, I spoke to a really smart MBA money manager guy the other day, who he's 48, and he's planning to live to 120. Now, that would have seemed mental like 10 years ago. But look at the technology involved with the COVID vaccination. Look at what Sinclair is doing. Look at these things. This is like real. It's not science fiction anymore. So like, people know about this, and they expect to be functional a much longer period of time, and to bring that into the equation.
So let me just riff off what you just said, David. Let's talk about this guy who's 48 and he was planning on living to 120. So one of the things we like to do at MEA is to help people, introduce them to what percentage of their adult life is still ahead of them.
Right.
So if you're 48 in America today, you're in your midlife. People think it's all downhill from there. Well, actually, if you're going to live to 120, you're going to have 102 years of adult life. So 120 minus 18. It starts at age 18.
Yep.
And at age 48, you have actually had 30 years. So at 48, you have 70% of your adult life still ahead of you if you're going to live to 120. Now, that's unusual. You can do the math. If you're, as I did a couple of years ago, I was 58. I think I'm going to live till 98. I was at halftime. 18 to 98 is 80 years, and I was at halftime at age 58. I would recommend that every Brookfield, whatever these companies are doing, WellPoint, etc., when someone is going to be introduced to your place, have them take the longevity quiz of what percentage of your adult life do you think is still ahead of you. And anybody who has at least 25% of their adult life ahead of them, I mean, frankly, any percent, but let's just say 25%, because I do know that there's some research that shows this. When people realize they have that much more life ahead of them, they are willing to try something new, because they realize they have time to actually get better at it. And so, long story short is, I would say these companies should be hiring ageist as a consultant. They should be learning about MEA and our program, and maybe we could actually help provide some of our programs in their as part of their education. Because you know what happens for some of these places? My parents live in one of these places. They're in their early 80s or almost mid 80s now, and their programming they have there is so predictable compared to what it was 25 years ago. And they live in a pretty, nice place, but it's not bingo exactly, but it is, it's not it's not about how do you bring someone in from outside and talk about artificial intelligence or understand how to actually improve your own intelligence. It's generally speaking entertainment as opposed to education and life enhancement.
So I want to take just a little bit deeper dive to the remaining life. So a lot of people who are watching this and who will watch it in the coming week are people who are doing assisted living. So their residents tend to, I mean, they're not going to be typically be in assisted living, and unless they've got some, you know, I'll use your term, David, they've got some disability, right? But even they, and so I worry. I mean, what's got my head spinning is that I worry that what happens is we who are operators get this mindset that they can't do any of these things because of these limitations, and I'm not sure that's true. Thoughts?
I hate that. That makes me berserk. You know, like, what the fuck?
What do you really believe, David?
I mean, if somebody told that to me, like if I like blew up my knee or something, I'm in a wheelchair, and suddenly people start talking to me like I have brain damage, I would go insane. No, I think that the idea, and really what like what Chip was saying, it's really so much of the programming is like, yeah, it's not like Chinese checkers anymore, but it's just like one, you know, we're at Mahjong. So, okay, great. You know, we have the capacity to learn pretty much, I mean, up until, you know, very late in life. In 3 years, you can learn anything. I mean, you can speak Mandarin, you can learn how to program, you can do all these things. It's hard. You have to pay attention, and you're not going to be you're not going to be translating at the UN, but you can do this. And I think that this is kind of a hot button with me. This idea that we lose capacity to do this, to do these things, is really something else. Like I see here, you know, about dementia. Okay, dementia is another thing. This is, I mean, we're talking about somebody with a disability here who needs a lot of very hands-on, high-touch care. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who don't have that and who can learn and can engage, and boy, do they want to. If you tell somebody that, you know, somebody who's like 80, 85 years old, and you say like, hey, I think you can learn about artificial intelligence. We're going to tell you about that, and we're going to show you how this works. And they're going to be like, well, I don't know about that. And we're going to like, yeah. Don't believe that shit. You can learn this. They're going to be like, really? How cool. Let's do this, right? That's me.
Yeah, you know, David, I love this. It's like we make these assumptions, and what if we came into an assisted living, and I'm sort of throwing this out to the community, right? But what if you came in and said, hey, we're going to teach Spanish to our residents? And the reaction is going to be, no, nobody's going to do that. Or we're going to teach them how to play the guitar or the drums. And, you know, what would it do to longevity? And it would reduce the pressure on staff, because people would be fired up about the things that they're doing. This just gets my juices going.
Well, and you're going to reduce the dementia. You're going to reduce Alzheimer's. Right. What you're doing is you're doing a neurogenerative activity. You are stressing the brain to learn something new, which is exactly the opposite of Chinese checkers. You're just telling the brain to switch off. No. Like, put some stress on that brain. Let's make some new connections. Let's learn some new stuff. Yeah, this is hard, but this is great. I feel like a fanatic, Chip.
You are a fanatic, and I think we're done. I think you
guys are fanatics, and that's what makes this so great, right?
Yes, we are a team.
So yeah, we look alike. So, two things. I want to give a little bit of a commercial pitch. So you guys do a virtual cocktail hour. Can we talk about that now? I guess we are. Do you have a virtual cocktail hour every couple of weeks, or is that open to anybody?
It's open to anybody, but it's the season's ending with our last show on January 7th. But you can actually see the vault of all of our historical shows with people like Danny Meyer and most recently Norma Kamali, the designer, Michael Franti, the musician. They're all on the Ageist YouTube channel, so you can go there and check them out. But if someone wants to look into it on January 7th, keep it. If you go to the MEA Facebook group, and it's a private Facebook group, just become a member there. We actually announce it there, or if you go to Ageist and just subscribe to Ageist, you'll get notice about these things as well.
Is that to the end of it forever, or just this season?
Good question.
Not telling, huh? Okay, good. I've really enjoyed it a lot. So we will, we will drop some links in after this is over. We'll put some show notes in, so we have links, David, to your chip, to the MEA site, and I can hardly wait to hear how this project is. It in the U.S. or Mexico? Can I at least ask that?
In the U.S. It's in the U.S. Yeah. Not saying anything more. Saying nothing more.
Well, it's interesting to me. There was a guy, I can't give you his name, but there was a VC guy in San Francisco that I met several years ago who was working. He even had a site in Northern California. He was working on something similar to this, not quite as much acreage, and I don't think he ever got it off the ground. I'm not sure why. I actually should go track him down and see if I can hear that story. But I can hardly wait. I just want to reserve a house there, I think.
Okay.
So.
All right. Well, thanks for allowing us to come on the show.
Great conversation, stimulating, is giving our community a lot to think about. So I appreciate it very much. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you later.
Bye-bye.